What up, everybody? It's the Built Different Podcast. Ricky, CEO of Extropian, Sean Greener, our COO, Justin, one of our data scientists. In this episode, we kind of want to talk to everybody about, what the Extropian mindset is and, relating it to the mental toughness in sports. Because obviously, the Extropian athlete is somebody that's mentally tough, somebody that's physically prepared, somebody that's like a game changer in their sport or respective area in life. So with that being said, Justin, I kind of want to throw it to you. What are some of the thoughts that you had, or maybe even some of the questions you had about the mental toughness of athletes in sports?
Yeah, when I think of like mental toughness in sports, it's definitely, I think the most clear examples to me are fighters or athletes that have been through like injuries or have been kind of down on their luck, sort of, in terms of like maybe they've lost a lot or maybe they've gotten cut from a team or things like that. Um, there's plenty of stories of fighters or athletes that have gone through that have ended up coming back to, either having like a second coming of their career, things like that, which is really entertaining to see. But I guess the first question that I would ask you guys too is kind of like, what specific characteristics do you see in like mentally tough athletes? How do you kind of define that?
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I think one thing that I see is like, the ability. I think one thing that you brought up that I liked was the ability to come back from injury or from adversity. And the other thing is, coming back from a mistake or from a loss or from, some kind of down moment, because that's when your mental toughness is really getting tested more so than any other time. It's like, okay, you just had a bad thing happen. Are you going to let that affect your next move or your next shot, or are you going to forget about it, move on, and have the mental strength to say it's over. I'm going to be better from here on out. And I think that's kind of to me where mental toughness really, comes in, is can you push past the bad moments to get back to form.
For sure. What about you, Ricky?
I agree with what Sean's saying, and agreed with what your kind of assessment was with like being mentally strong. But it's like that person that gets knocked down is able to get back up. There's so many situations where guys or girls, like in their respective sport, they have that moment and they never come back from it. But there's the ones that are really tough, that mentally tough, that are able to overcome and overcome similar situations and thrive. Um, yeah, it's one of the cases I think about. Sean, was like Alex Smith and that horrible leg break. I mean, I think he broke his tibia and he fractured his tibia and fibia. And if you look at his leg now, it doesn't even look like a leg. I mean, 17 surgeries, went through sepsis, and still wanted to get back out there on the field and played at a pretty high level. That to me, that's one of the ultimate cases of mental toughness and physical toughness as well. But yeah, there's a lot of cases in different sports of different guys and girls just overcoming the odds and you know taking home the gold or taking home the championship or just performing at a high level.
Do you think mental toughness is something that you kind of are born with, or you kind of just have it, or do you think it's something that athletes can kind of develop on their own throughout their career, or like a trainer or a coach could help them develop throughout their career? That's something I think I've asked EJ and Ronnie about that before, and I think they get pretty good answers. But overall, what do you think the case is for that? Is it something you have innately, or you can kind of work on it throughout your career if you don't really have it to begin with?
I think you can work on it for sure. So I think some people are born with it. Some people just inherently have that, and it could be maybe not necessarily born with it, but they maybe had life struggles that they had to endure that made them a harder person, that made them tougher, that made them like stronger. Um, an example, David Goggins. You know what I mean? He was a big time loser. Like he was overweight. He wasn't doing the right things, and he built himself into an unstoppable, machine. Where like he can't be defeated now. He's a motivational speaker, and he's inspired a lot of people to have the courage to do things or to push through. Kind of like similarly, I know we keep mentioning our technology, help people push past their limits. You know what I mean? So I think it can be coached in you. I think that some people through life's struggles and through their experiences, trials and tribulations, they develop it. And then in the realm of sports, I think some people they're just that phenomenal athlete or that maybe have that goat mentality that they're able to persevere. But yeah, I think you can develop it. Definitely, David Goggins was a great example, and there's countless examples in sports.
I think I I think I agree with Ricky that, I think some people are born with it. Some people just have this, inherent like mental strength where it's like and I think what it really comes down to partially is your confidence in yourself, right? Because
Yeah.
if you're a confident person and you're confident in your abilities and you know, that then that's like 90% of the battle. So if you're able to display that confidence consistently and on a daily basis, then nothing should really throw you off of your game so much that you become mentally weak. But at the same time, I also agree with Ricky's example, and I think there's other examples of guys who maybe weren't born into a leadership mentality or a leadership role, and like coming out of college or when they got drafted, like they weren't supposed to be this like superstar person, or they weren't like, oh, I'm going to be the greatest quarterback of all time, like, but they grew into that as their skills developed, as their confidence grew. So I think
Hmm.
it's both, but I think it really just comes down to the person believing in themselves. And I think Tom Brady's a great example. He was a sixth round pick. No one really thought that highly of him when he was drafted. But one of the stories that I like about him is he like went up to Robert Kraft like right after he was drafted, and he was like, "I'm the best decision you ever made." And like this was when he was like not even this is when he was a backup quarterback. So it's like Robert Kraft's probably looking at this guy like who is this clown? Why is he, like talking himself up to me? And I think looking back, he was the best decision that Robert Kraft ever made. So
Most definitely.
um,
I
yeah, I think that's kind of my thoughts on it. What about you, Justin?
I
I
told I
sorry, Sean. Can I just before you start? Can I touch on what you said, Sean?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, there is like because I'm always studying the mind and the brain. Obviously, our logo's a brain because it's about our logo and our whole technology about mindset and being stronger. But there's neuroplasticity. Like you can literally change who you are. Like people don't think that your brain or your mind or your abilities can change, but you literally the science proves that we can become somebody else. So just adding to what you kind of said there, Sean, about the self confidence, it's like it's something you develop, and your brain reflects that, when they do scans of your brain, I mean, the different areas of the brain responsible for like, growth and different things, it changes. So just wanted to add that in as well. Sorry, Jessica.
no, no, I agree with what you guys are saying. I think that mental toughness is definitely something that you can develop, especially if you are in a situation or you come from a background where your back is kind of up against the wall, where you don't really have a lot of options. Maybe you're a professional football player or something, and you're about to get cut, or maybe you're on a losing streak or something like that, and you really kind of don't have choices. I think mental toughness is kind of it almost becomes like your only option. Like you have to be mentally tough to make it through those situations. But I'm kind of curious, like on the flip side of that, do you think you can do you think you can lose mental toughness too? Like on the flip side, if you're someone that had their back against the wall and you really had to grind it out and be mentally tough to achieve success, do you think once you are successful you can lose your mental toughness or kind of atrophies and you lose the edge that you had before, whether like in terms of your ability or you don't have that resilience that you had earlier on in your career or something like that?
I think that if you're someone who is truly mentally tough and like mentally strong, then I don't think you're ever going to lose you know, that ability to believe in yourself unless something happens that like significantly affects your confidence. Like, for example, let's say someone got injured and they're no longer like they used to run a 4.4 and they're now running like a 5.4. They lost a whole second worth of speed on their 40 time. Like, that's something that could, make you lose confidence in your abilities and your belief in yourself, which could then kind of. So, I guess my answer is yes. I do think you can
Mm-hmm.
become less mentally tough, but I think the people that are born with it and the people that kind of are, have that uber belief in themselves, regardless of what anyone else thinks, will remain mentally tough more so than someone who's just mentally like someone who's just confident because of like results based
Mm-mm.
situations.
For sure.
Yeah, me too. I feel like we've seen it happen before, like where people become complacent. Maybe the success was they just had so much success they just kind of rest on their laurels. Like,
Yeah.
Marvin Hagler had that saying, if you sleep in silk pajamas, are you really going to be getting up at 6 in the morning to run like you used to? You know what I mean?
Right.
A lot of people, you know, they get that mental toughness because there's the hunger and there's like feeding the family or
Yeah.
taking care of the kids, the wife and kids, or the husband and the kids or whatever, and they reach that level of success and they just they lose. There's a little bit of sense of complacency there because hey, I've made it. I've made enough money. Maybe that competitive edge is gone, but yeah, you see it all the time also too with like, sports like golf where guys get the yips or, the yips can happen, I guess, with kicking as well in football. But, they just something's a little off and, you have to go see a actual, a coach or even a sports psychologist to get you back on track. So, I mean, it happens all the time. You can go from the real killers, like the best of the best, the ones that we consider the goats, those are the guys and girls that maybe never lose it. But there are those, tiers below those, top people that we've seen them fall off their pedestal and never even return back on that pedestal. Now, greatness, I think, is like maybe you get knocked off that pedestal and you kind of come back. That's more
Yeah.
rare than anything else. But if you do that, that's truly remarkable.
So when we talk about like mental toughness and like the guys that are truly uh like rare breeds when it comes to having that sort of resilience in them, what's kind of like when you think of mental toughness, what's the biggest example that you can think of? Maybe a recent example or like your favorite example in sports history that you've seen. What do you guys think? Sean, you can go first. I'll throw it to you.
I'll let Ricky go first because
Okay.
I still need some time to think.
I mean, I have several examples. I'm a Jordan guy, so I'm gonna go with the flu game, game six against the Jazz. And to be honest, like a lot of people call it the flu game, but from what I've heard and inside information or whatever, not inside information I've personally gotten, not yet at least, but he had food poisoning. It wasn't even the flu, and he was able to kind of go out there and close that game out. And I mean, the shots of Pippen, I think the flu game was game six. The shots of Pippen holding him up, walking him back over to the bench. I mean, those will live on forever. Um, Sean, I'll
Right.
pass it to you because I may have another one.
Um, no, I mean keep going. I'm still thinking.
It was game
Well,
five, so yeah, I was wrong. It was game five of the '97 playoffs or finals, I should say.
I think a
Justin,
pretty
how
good
about you?
I think a pretty good recent example of mental toughness is that Dan Hooker fight this weekend. My goodness, me and Ricky saw it together. Sean, did you see it?
Yes, I did see some highlights of it. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I did see highlights of it.
Well, it was crazy to see live, and then you find out that Dan Hooker he broke his wrist, and then he broke his orbital bone during the fight, and he ended up
Hmm.
winning the entire. That's if that's not mental toughness, I don't know what is. I don't know how you break an orbital bone at some point during a fight and decide to keep going. That's something that you have to. I feel like you have to have that inside of you. You can't just make that over time. He's a savage.
He's got that dog in him. But the thing about that too, Justin, he didn't even look like you didn't. Some fighters you'll see them get kicked in the arm, and remember Rich Franklin when he fought Chuck Liddell, he broke his arm. He like shattered his wrist or something after a kick, and he still
Yep.
knocked him out and won the fight in the first round. I mean, there's crazy instances. I think fight. That's why we love fighting, man. Like some of the toughest guys and girls in the world, but with the Dan Hooker situation, what was crazy is like no tell whatsoever. Because like you'll see guys and girls shake their hand out if they get a broken arm or broken hold their shoulder or in boxing I've seen guys holding their face or kind of like wiping away at their face if their orbital's broken. But with him there was no tell. The post fight interview, he just was up there happy, smiling, and you couldn't adrenaline plays a big part in it, but yeah, that's crazy mental toughness. A crazy example, most recent example.
I
Yeah, for
think
sure.
I think for me, I decided the person that I want to highlight is Tiger Woods. I think
That's
from
good.
the perspective of mental toughness. First off, even before his injury, like car accident injury, coming back and stuff like that, like he just had that like killer in him when it came to like
Hmm.
you get to those last holes of the big tournament of the Masters of the PGA Tour, and like it was just like if you're the guy who's like up by one stroke or up by two strokes and you've got Tiger chasing you, you're nervous the entire time because he's just like he's that guy who's just like, oh, I'm gonna catch you, like get ready, and like then like like you've seen guys who had leads on him and it's just like it'll just slowly start going away. All of a sudden you get to like the last hole and they're tied, and like the other guy just looks broken mentally because he's like he
Hmm.
knows already just from who Tiger is and his mentality that like he's screwed. So I think that's kind of my example, and I know Tiger's made so many clutch shots and especially clutch putts. When it comes down to the crunch time, I think clutch like being clutch is a big factor in like mental toughness and confidence and stuff like that.
Um, Sean, touching on Tiger as well as him winning a tournament recently. What was it? He won the Masters not too long ago, right? Or was it? It was a late season tournament he won.
I don't think it was
Um,
the Masters, but I think it
it
was
was a
one
couple
of like the
years
big.
ago.
Yeah, it was one of the bigger
Mm.
tournaments.
Yeah, and that's after years of being injured, years out of the game. I mean, the guy's back is pretty messed up. Another example I was going to throw out there was, but it's kind of a tainted one now, was Lance Armstrong.
Yeah.
I know it still took some, major mental toughness to, dealing with cancer or being in remission. I don't remember what stage he was at, but there was the doping. But I mean, outside of that, it would probably have been an amazing example. I think it was still a pretty good example, even with the unfortunate things that he did to taint the legacy a little bit.
Yeah. So when like we've been talking a lot about like individual athletes having mental toughness, but how do you think mental toughness kind of what do you think that looks like for a team sport as opposed to in a sport where it's just one person participating at a time, like fighting or golf or something like that, or like what can you think of like any kind of unique sort of challenges that come up during like a team sport versus a individual sport?
Uh, I was going to take this one, Sean. I think it's always like that saying, "You're only as strong as your weakest link." So I
Yeah,
think part of that is kind of there is individuals with that mental toughness on specific teams and throughout history that they were that mentally tough individual. And I think true leadership is like when you're able to bring guys and girls along with you because you are that like mentally strong individual that some of it when you're really that top dog and you got that dog and I think it filters down to the rest of the team. You know what I mean? A lot of guys and guys and girls on these teams with these individuals that are so mentally tough, they don't want to upset them or they don't want to let this individual down. So they'll step their game up to meet the guy or girl's like intensity or their how passionate they are about winning. And so from the team element, I think you see a lot of teams, especially in the NBA now, that there is not that one guy on that team that's got that kind of mental toughness, that edginess that pushes these other players to heighten their performance. But there's a couple teams with those guys, and you can see where those teams kind of stand out. So I think if you have that one individual, it can really parlay into team success because that toughness filters down to others. I think that can play itself out, or the opposite. Like I said, you don't have that individual, and those teams are they're mediocre, or maybe in those tough times they don't come through, or they fold essentially.
I completely agree, Ricky, with what you just said. I think, from the team perspective, right? I don't think every single person needs to be like this super mentally tough individual on a team, but I think that having like leaders, in order for you to be a leader, I think you do need to have that mental toughness, because you're the one that, if everyone else is down, if everyone else is a little mentally weak, you're the one who has to get them to not be anymore. You're the one who has to get them back up. And, if they can't get themselves back up. So I think you see that a lot with leaders. And I think you see teams specifically in, basketball and baseball, where if the leader's not mentally tough, like Ricky was saying, the team starts doubting, themselves. They don't have anyone to get them to the level that they need to be, because everyone, when you're not showing that mental toughness at the top, it trickles down to everywhere else. But if you have, guys at the bottom who might be, doubting and stuff, but you have that guy at the top who's like reinforcing, positive, inspirational vibes to the team, you can bring someone back up with you. And I think that's kind of where, from a team perspective, it's just you need to have those leaders be mentally tough, and or they don't even have to be the best player on your team, but you got to have those guys that can pull everyone else out of the funk, if they're in a rough situation.
Do you think there's
Hmm.
certain positions in certain sports that are it's more important for those people in that position to be mentally tough? Like the quarterback is, of course, like the captain of the offense. You would want your quarterback to be pretty mentally tough, but what about like for other sports? Because I know you guys follow basketball and baseball more than I do, and I'm not super familiar. But is there like a certain position that is kind of like the cornerstone of basketball or of baseball that is kind of like the leader that sets the tone mentally and stuff like that that you can think of?
I I would say sports like hockey and the goal. Sometimes that goaltender can set the tone. You know what I mean? They can be that leader. They can be that person that's gonna because anybody that's in the goal having a puck, like even like hockey or soccer, a puck coming at you, and like I was watching the U.S. men's national team the other night, and they went to penalty kicks. You know what I mean? It was all up to the goaltender. He was all by himself. Matt Turner, Arsenal player, also by the way. Um, but yeah, I think those outside of like a quarterback of the team, the goaltender, you could say lacrosse as well. The goaltender can be that tone setter as well. That they're probably one of the probably the outside of quarterback on a football team, the most important position. In basketball, you have it's kind of not. I don't think the dynamics in basketball are what they used to be. But it used to be the point guard. It used to be the kind of guy that was the leader, that was the tone setter, the guy that set the table for everybody else, the guy that set everything up. But yeah,
What
that's my thoughts. Hmm?
what changed, Ricky? You said that the point guard was like the tone setter. What's kind of changed? Why is it not like that
I mean,
anymore?
you have everybody bringing the ball up now. People set, like you have Jokic setting up the plays from the center position. You have LeBron from the forward position, power forward position, being the point guard. You have, I don't think you have the
Positionless
traditional point guard.
basketball.
Yes, positionless basketball. You don't have your traditional point guard that their whole goal is to facilitate and set guys up. No, you have Steph Curry's that are like almost like shooting guards in the point guard position. It's like Sean said, positionless basketball.
I think, and from my perspective, I would say, there's certain people that I don't think it's necessarily a position thing, but it's a
Hmm.
field general. Like the term field general, I think, is a good explanation. So like that person that's making sure that everyone's in the right spots and doing the right things. That's that
Hmm.
leader. Like So like for example, Derek Jeter is a good example in
Hmm.
baseball. He's a shortstop. He's in the middle of the field. He's making sure, that everyone's in the right spots. Like the pitcher, right, is the one that touches the ball every single play. Derek Jeter's not going to be involved in every play, but Derek Jeter is involved in every play because he was, you know, making sure that everyone, had confidence, that everyone was, on the same page, that you knew this is where you're supposed to be at this time, and like
Hmm.
that is kind of the field general. So in soccer, I don't watch a lot of soccer, but I would think that that person is kind of like the midfielder in soccer, right? You're involved in the offense, you're involved in the defense, you're that middle of the field person that has to make sure that everyone's communicating with each other and make sure that everyone's in the right spot. And a goalie can be that too, especially on things like a corner kick or something like that, where it's a big defensive position. Then the goalie's kind of the leader from that perspective. But um, ultimately, I think it's just who has that leadership voice and who has that um, like there's some people that lead by example, and then there's some people that lead through you know words and through action. Like telling people. So I think it's those people that are kind of like not necessarily a position, but wherever that position is, they they are knowing where everyone's supposed to be and directing accordingly.
I'm actually shocked by your soccer or football knowledge there, Sean. I didn't think you knew what a midfielder was, and the corner
And
kick, knowing the whole dynamics of that. I was surprised. You said midfielder. Well, I think in defense, like it would be sometimes the middle linebacker. You know what I mean? That would be that tone setter, the guy that's making sure everybody's in the right position. He's getting the calls in. So very similar to a midfielder in soccer, except he's not playing both sides of the ball,
It
obviously.
on defense in football, I would say it's usually either middle linebacker or one of the
Someone
safeties.
is
That's
secondary,
typically
yes.
because like safeties, are behind everybody, so they're making sure that you're here, you're
Hmm.
there, um, and usually that person is the one who has the mic in their helmet on defense. That's the defensive leader. Um, because you can be an amazing cornerback or something like that, but as a cornerback, you're only responsible for your half of the field. You're not going to be,
Hmm.
vocalizing things to the guy on the far other side of the field that you're not really like communicate. Like you just don't need to communicate with that person. But the safety and the middle linebacker, they're right in the middle of the action. They're the ones who are communicating with everybody.
But
so
I
that's
agree
like
with you what you were saying. Like Derek Jeter and like you think about also too with the Heat. You have Udonis Haslam on the bench. That's almost another coach slash player. So that's another example. Sorry, Justin.
well, it actually kind of helped me segue a little bit. So like that's kind of like the specific position on the field that helps kind of elevate the mental toughness or set the tone for the team. But what do you guys think about? Is there like a what role does like the coach play in a team sport for mental toughness and kind of setting the tone there? Is there a certain coach or a certain trainer, I guess, for combat sports that you think does a good job of really setting the sort of mental tone for for their athletes or things like that? Or what's another way of putting it is like what do you think is like the most mentally tough football team, basketball team that you've seen in sports history? Do you think kind of a two-parter?
I don't know about sports history, but if you ask me what coach is like the most mentally tough right now, I'm going with Dan Campbell from the Lions. That dude is
Bite
like
off.
he's a little crazy. I'll be
Bite a
honest,
kneecap.
but like when you're telling people, oh, we're gonna run through walls, we're gonna bite your kneecaps off, like that dude is just. And I think you see it with coaches by how the team responds to it, right? Because there's certain coaches that like they might be, an offensive guru or a quarterback whisperer. But if the team doesn't trust them, if the team isn't bought in on their, philosophies and their coaching and stuff, then they lose the locker room and all of a sudden the team's going to go to shambles. So I
Hmm.
think, we kind of saw that with the Broncos with Nathaniel Hackett. I don't think anyone on that team really got along with each other. I don't think anyone was bought in, and they were horrible, even though they were supposed to be really good. So I think, for me, my boy Dan Campbell is the mindset goat right now in football.
I have one for boxing, and she's unfortunately she doesn't get the credit she needs, and she's not really coaching anybody right now. But it was Ann Wolf. She was a former pro boxer, but she trained a couple of fighters. Most notably, it's because I'm talking about him right now. I can't remember his name, but she would literally bring him out into the woods, into like an abandoned, like I don't even know where. Nobody knows where these camps were. I don't think, but he would live in a shed with no internet, no TV, no. I don't think he had cell service. And her training and her regimen was like second to none. I mean, it was like military style training. And this guy, he would knock everybody out when he was trained by her. He fought Canelo one time and he didn't have her. He lost every fight that he fought. He wasn't trained by her. He lost, but he was like a machine when he was trained by her. But that was just. I mean, she had him out in the woods doing all type of crazy stuff. I mean, it was like Rambo out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But she in probably combat sports, that's probably one of the more extreme examples of like just toughness and just mentally tough and just break you down and build you back up type of coaching.
What about you, Justin? Any examples of coaches that come to your mind?
one that I think about is Mike Tomlin from the Steelers because I still remember. I think it was maybe 2 years, 3 years ago, maybe when they were on like their fourth string quarterback. They lost their first three guys, and they ended up still making the playoffs. I can't think of too many other coaches that could lead a team to that. I don't remember how far they went in the playoffs, but if you're on your fourth string quarterback, you're having a rough season, and to still be able to make it that far is pretty impressive. And I think in the however long he's been the coach of the Steelers, I think they've missed the playoffs maybe one, or they've only had one losing season or something like that. And I think it was
I
a
don't think they've
difference.
I don't think they've
I feel
ever
like,
had a losing season under him. I'm pretty
maybe not,
sure.
I don't know, but yeah, I feel like you need a very mentally strong coach, the one that really kind of sets the tone to do that. And I think it says a lot that he's been able to do that for this long, you know. But
For sure.
I want
the
to clear
last
up my brain fart. The fighter was James Kirkland. So and Wolf trained as James Kirkland. If you ever want to see their regimen, go and look it up on YouTube because absolutely brutal. Sorry.
No, that's fine. My last kind of question for you guys is just like, is there a certain game or a certain fight where you feel like mental toughness was the difference between winning and losing? Like a specific game, maybe a Super Bowl or like a high stakes title fight, maybe. I'm trying to think myself. Um,
I wanted to mention one. They didn't win this game, but I was really impressed by his toughness, and that was the Super Bowl Eagles versus New England, where T.O. came back and played pretty much on a broken leg and had like nine receptions. I think he had maybe a touchdown or two and 122 yards, and they almost won that game.
I was gonna say the Patriots and the Falcons like 6 years ago, 28-3.
That's just a.
That
I'm a Bucks fan, so the Falcons. It was bound to happen. It happens. That's what happens to the Falcons. I mean, credit to the Patriots, but I mean that was more Falcons than Patriots, honestly.
I mean,
I
if you're
mean,
down
but that
5 points, I think that's mental toughness to come back from that.
I think it's the mental toughness of the Patriots and stuff that they legitimately broke the mental toughness of the Falcons. The Falcons should have had no reason to be concerned when they're up 28-3, and then all of a sudden the Patriots just start coming back and they just break them.
Just run the damn ball.
That
Just run the ball, Rachel. Run the ball.
sometimes.
What about
Um,
you,
Same
Sean?
thing happened with the Patriots in Seattle, though, Sean. Remember, just handed off to Marshawn Lynch at the half-yard line.
Oh yeah,
yeah, you can't overthink it. I think when you overthink it, that's when you mess up. But a specific game, I think the examples that you guys provided were pretty good. I'm trying to think. Like, I mean, I think coming back from like 3-1, like anything like that, like um, I know LeBron did it, and, but
Didn't the
Uh,
Dolphins have a couple games that they came back from? It was like a crazy comeback this year or last season.
yeah, they had a losing streak this year where they lost 4 or 5, and I know Mike McDaniel kind of discussed this exact topic, which was like everyone's happy and stuff when you're winning games and you're just cruising and you're coming back and winning, but how do you respond after you lost 1, 2, 3 games in a row now? What are you going to do? What is your team? How is your team going to respond to that? And they ended up winning a couple at the end and winning the final game of the year that put them in the playoffs. So I think things like that. Yeah, any time that someone is like on the downslope and they can fight out of it and get a victory is a good example.
I think another good example, Sean, was and we talked about in a previous episode, the U.S. men's swim team, and that victory where they came back from so far back, and the announcers were basically, they had it wrapped up for, I think it was the Australians. They had a gift wrap for them, like, oh, and then they came back. I mean, and they just fought their way back. That was an impressive moment, I think, in sports history.
I don't
Sure.
know whether it was the Australians, but I remember another one where they were against the French. I don't know if it was the same one
I think it's probably the
different.
French. Yeah, it's probably the French.
But yeah, I mean, both of those teams were crazy. Like they both crushed the previous best world record. They both crushed it by like a couple seconds, which is unheard of. And the fact that
Hmm.
they still won despite basically another team being if they hadn't been in that, the other team would have set a world record, and they basically beat another team's world record in real time. That's crazy.
And speaking of swimming too, like Michael Phelps and just his mindset. I mean, it's similar to what you were saying, where Tiger would catch up, come from behind, and people would, kind of fold. Michael Phelps to have that, you're on top for that long. You've done, won that many races. People are nipping at your heels. You're like you're enemy number one. You're the target, and people, you still overcome, and you still are able to get the gold in those different situations where everybody's just trying to come after you, and you're always gonna have the guys in the pool that are gonna try and stop you from making history. I mean, that's a lot of that's it doesn't seem like much, but if you put yourself in his shoes and like what you really have to go through mentally, um, that's some real mental fortitude there as well.
For sure. Those are all my questions. If you guys had any others.
I just thought of one more example. I heard of this. This happened recently, but in F1, I believe Max Verstappen. Right?
Verstappen.
That's how. Yeah, how he had a 23-second lead and was literally you know, all he had to do was just go easy and just win the thing, and he radioed into his coaches or whatever, and he's like, oh, what was the fastest lap time? And they're like, oh, it was
Mm,
this, and it was literally his own teammate too, so it wasn't oh, let me get it so my team gets more points. There's his team was already going to get the points, and they were like, just don't do what you're thinking. He's like, no, I want the fastest lap. I'm going to come in and change my tires and go for it. I think that's a little crazy, but at the same time, that's that like oof, you've got to have you got to be really mentally tough to go against your coaches, against common sense, and say I'm just going to be better and do it anyways.
yeah, he could have blown a tire. He could have done anything. Verstappen's a beast, man. Like he's killing it in F1 right now. And, yeah, he has a long way to catch Hamilton as far as like the most first place finishes or whatever. But I mean, he stays on it, and the car keeps doing what it's doing. He has a chance. I mean, he has the extropian mindset. I think we've asked this on another episode, but who do you think, if you think of any sport, any athlete, any team, who embodies that extropian mindset in your opinion? Who would you say is like, if you were to make a almost like a Jerry West logo for our company, who would that player be?
That's a good question.
I think there's a lot of guys that could fit
Yeah.
into that, and a lot of them we posted on our Instagram, as people of the week that we wanted to highlight. But I've always been impartial to Usain Bolt. I think that guy is just a pure beast, and like he wasn't even concerned about the people that were running against him. He's like, I'm just gonna beat you all.
Yeah. For me, I think it's anybody that just breaks records. I mean, even what is it, Felix Baumgartner that jumped from outer space. I mean, that's an extropian. He could be our logo, you know. Anybody that breaks barriers or breaks boundaries or is, you know, people say that hey, they can't do, you know, can't accomplish something and they got it done, and you know, that's to me anybody could be the extropian logo, but yeah, I don't think any one man or woman or team embodies, you know, would be the logo. There's just so many different examples of it, and it's just having that killer mindset, that dog in you, that never give up attitude, and that person that just doesn't let conventional wisdom or anybody tell them they can't do something. To me, that's anybody that does that. I think embodies. They could be our logo. You know what I mean?
No, I agree for sure.
Well, I guess our logo kind of is embodies all of those different people and those different mindsets. So we don't need a logo, any one person as a logo.
Yeah.
So yeah, great conversation today. Like it didn't get heated. I'm glad there was no goat debates because that tends to happen when we start. Even though you know, well, that would be more so Adrian, but yeah, everybody kind of agrees on the goats on this call because I think we had that episode. But you know, everybody out there, thank you for listening again. And again, you know, we want to build champions. We have the technology to do that. We want to build a movement. We want people to comment, like our stuff, subscribe. Yeah, and just get to know each and every one of us. You can reach out to us on our socials. But more than anything else, thank you for listening and thank you for taking the time to check us out. But with that being said, you know, we want to thank you guys and hope you guys had a productive week and have an excellent weekend. And we will catch you on the next one. Thank you guys.